British Guyana was the name of the British colony on the northern coast of South America, now the independent nation of Guyana. The area was originally settled by the Dutch at the start of the 17th century as the colonies of Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice. These three colonies were captured by the British in 1796. They were returned to the Dutch Batavian Republic in 1802, but were again captured by British forces a year later and were officially ceded to the United Kingdom in 1814, and consolidated into a single colony in 1831. The colony's capital was at Georgetown, known as Stagroe prior to 1812. Guyana went on to become independent of the United Kingdom on May 26, 1966. First we will give out basic information about Guyana. Guyana has a present population of 744,748 and a population density of 3.53 inhabitants per square kilometer. Its capital is Georgetown and the official language is English, but also other native languages are spoken. Today, Guyana is a semi-presidential republic and the current president is Donald Ramotar. The official currency is the Guyanese dollar. History. Before the arrival of European explorers, the area which corresponds today to Guyana was inhabited by the Aralaks. The Aralaks were displaced by the Caribs, who dominated much of the region and then moved to the islands of the Caribbean, which took its name from them. The first European facilities, during the 17th century, were Dutch. It was the West India Company which region of Innsbruck, economic development, based on sugarcane and cotton. The British occupied the region after the 18th century and finally obtained in 1814. However, British Guyana was not created until 1831. Under British rule, the Amerindian population was reduced to minority status by the influx of African populations and India. The Guyana has adopted a constitution in 1928, but waited until 1966 to gain their independence. Demographic analysis. 26% of the population is under 15 years, 69% between 15 and 65, and 5% over 65. Real growth of the population is very low, around 0.2 to 3% annually. The birth rate is high of 18%, which gives a fertility rate of more than 2 children per woman. The difference is explained by a negative migration balance of negative 7.5%. The mortality rate is moderate, 8 per thousand, but the infant mortality rate is 30%. Education in Guyana. The education system in Guyana is a legacy of its time as British Guyana. Curricula, funding, standards and other policies are set by the central government and implemented through the Ministry of Education and related agencies. Primary education is obligatory and requires assistance from 6 years. When finished primary school, take a general test that determines which type of school each student enters. There are high schools. Students who perform well in their assessments of primary schools are given places in school class. There are about 10 schools technical/vocational in the country. Economic structure. Primary sector. The sugar sector, whose contribution to GDP is high, 5.4% of GDP, was affected by a decline in production and profits in 2010, which reflected both the low price and the lower export volumes. The revenues from this sector for exports decreased by 13.2% and export volume declined by 3.7%. Rice production was 360,996 tons in 2010, representing an expansion of 0.4% and is the second highest annual production of industry in a decade. The rest of the agricultural sector had a 3.2% expansion in 2010, partly due to campaigns to stimulate food production and construction of a bridge on the river Berbice, which has facilitated farmers transporting their products. The sector of mining and quarrying contracted by 6.9%. Specifically, the bauxite industry continued to lack problems for years and blamed a decline of 9.8% due to weak international demand and inventory accumulation. The situation was different gold, as rising prices and increased investments in the industry aimed at raising productivity allowed a revenue increase of 2.9%. Secondary sector. The manufacturing sector remained virtually stagnant, as a whole expanded by 0.3%, well below the growth rate of 4.3% in 2009. The construction sector continued to perform well in 2010. Activity in commercial and industrial sectors and government infrastructure projects, including housing, contributed to an increase of 10.8%. It is expected that the sector continues to expand by 4.5% in 2011, as a result of the continuing program of capacity building running the government. Tertiary sector. The insurance and financial services expanded by 9.3% in 2010, a percentage slightly lower than in 2009, and accounted for 4% of GDP, reflecting the growing strength of the domestic economy. Now we will analyze each of the investment opportunities that exist in Guyana. Bauxite mine. The bauxite industry is having problems due to low international demand and inventory accumulation, which has caused a decline of 9.8%. Sugar production. Although its contribution to GDP is high, 5.4%, growth has been declining due to low sugar prices in the international market, which has led to lower volumes produced and exported. Its profit fell to 9.4%. Construction. Housing sector. The construction sector continued to perform well in 2011. Activity in commercial and industrial sectors and government infrastructure projects, including housing, contributed to an increase of 10.8%. In which sector to invest? We decided to invest in the construction sector, because as we have seen is a rapidly growing sector and the supply does not meet the demand yet. What is our business? Our company is a real estate agency, dedicated to the sale with access to finance affordable homes, apartments and offices. Why invest there? Stability and economic growth. Guyana experienced sustained economic growth, averaging 0.17% and 3.89% per year during 2002-2005 and 2006-2010, respectively. This has generated household income and boosted consumer confidence, which, in turn, had optimistic expectations about future income to increase their loans. Banking and financial system. The increase in household debt has been reinforced by liberalization, deregulation, financial sector consolidation and technological advances. Mortgage rates. Because to an initiative by the government to facilitate access to mortgage credit, interest rates are low and affordable. We can conclude that although Guyana has traditionally lived on food exports, this sector has been greatly favored by the international context. However, the domestic economy Guyana, which enjoys stability, encourages greater consumption and greater access to credit. The construction sector is growing strongly thanks to the intervention of the state, which has managed to lower interest rates and encourages investment with tax advantages. If we invest in the sector, our strategy would be to sell a greater volume, low cost of interest,